The question is that the motion be agreed to. Paul Foster-Bell.
E te mana whakawa tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa e ngā mema. Sir, in rising to take a call on this parental leave and employment protection 6 months paid leave and work contact hours amendment bill in the name of Sue Moroney, I want to begin by rejecting some of the suggestions that Ms Moroney has tossed across the House. We on this side don't need to be lectured by that member on playing politics. This is, after all, the member who brought a funerary urn into this chamber to play politics over a tragedy, something which was actually offensive to members on this side and many Māori people by violating just decency, common decency, and the tapu of this House. I want to talk, Mr Speaker, about the positive things that this government has been doing in this space and why this bill isn't actually required in the form it's been presented to the House by Ms Moroney. So this bill intends to amend the Parental Leave and Employment Protection Act 1978 to extend paid parental leave to 26 weeks. There is a certain irony in this, sir, in that once again we had a lecture from the other side on what a miserable government this is. Well, it turns out that in 2007, the Families Commission gave the then Minister Ruth Dyson, Minister of Labour, a report recommending paid parental leave be extended to 13 months by 2015, including a month for fathers. Well, having the power as they did at that time, but also running a surplus, Labour still chose not to implement those changes. They chose to do nothing while they had the opportunity to do it. Rather, they play politics with it once they sit on the opposition benches. This is a government which is committed to giving children the very best start in life.
Order. Look, order. I'm actually trying to hear the member, and there's barracking of both sides. Now, barracking's fine, but they should be reasonable, and I actually want to hear what the member's saying. Paul Foster-Bell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sir, we are a government committed to giving kids the very best start in life, and that's why this bill, in our view, is neither necessary nor affordable. So under the watch of John Key and this national-led government, we've actually extended paid parental leave from 14 weeks to 18 weeks over the next 2 years, as was announced in the 2014 budget. And we have consistently said that we are prepared to extend paid parental leave in a way that is affordable, both to the taxpayers of New Zealand, as fiscal conditions permit, but also as is affordable to the employers of New Zealand. The last thing we would want are measures which create greater unemployment in this country. We want as many New Zealanders as possible to have access to high-quality jobs, and that's why we believe the MBIE estimate of the cost of this bill, which is $445.8 million over the next 4 years, is unaffordable. So we've extended paid parental leave in a way that the country can afford, and it's just another example of Labour writing cheques that they know they can't afford to pay for. Sir, the other provisions in this bill which were examined in the Select Committee and which I pay particular interest to were around the suggestion of contact hours. Now, this was a well-intentioned provision, no doubt, by the member, but it was somewhat superseded by events in that on the 17th of March in this year, the Parental Leave and Employment Protection Amendment Act 2016 received the royal assent. And that legislation, sir, provided for keeping in touch days, which is essentially the same or a very similar contact. It allows an employee to stay in touch with their workplace, to keep up to date with changing practices, to maintain that network without invalidating any of their entitlement to paid parental leave. This is actually a sensible and logical measure. It was championed in the previous parliament and before by my former colleague Katrina Shanks, the then National List member, who actually introduced the concept, I recall, as a remit at a National Party conference. This was a positive, sensible, logical concept, and it's actually already been implemented by the government. So the Select Committee made the sensible... It was resurrected by the government, but it was a sensible step to take this out of the actual legislation, given it had already been passed. Sir, in the Select Committee, we listened very carefully to a wide range of evidence. I took particular interest into the submissions from officials from the Ministry of Health around breastfeeding. We know that the research of the Nobel laureate, Professor Heckman, James Heckman, shows that the investment you make in children from preconception to the age of 3 is the best possible investment you can make. It pays maximum return. And we know that children who are breastfed exclusively for as long as possible will have the best possible health outcomes. However, the evidence submitted from the Ministry of Health failed to show conclusively that in the New Zealand instance, the extension of paid parental leave to the extent that the member is proposing would have that equally positive effect, particularly among Māori and Pacifica communities who have a lower than average rate of breastfeeding and particularly exclusive breastfeeding than the general population. So, Sir, there are considerable costs to this bill and there are potentially benefits from extending paid parental leave, but because of that lack of conclusivity to the evidence, the scientific research, the empirical studies that were referenced in the material provided by the Ministry of Health, members on the government side were not entirely convinced that it would have a benefit that would outweigh the significant financial costs, both to the taxpayer and indeed to employers and ultimately to the employees if those jobs are extinguished from our labour market. So, Sir, National has done much to increase the duration of paid parental leave, certainly much more than the last term of the previous Labour government ever achieved. We've done a number of other things which help parents, including home for life carers. We've whāngai parents, grandparents, permanent guardians have all had their entitlements extended. And I want to pay tribute to my opponent but friend Tracy Martin, who came into this House with a very sensible, pragmatic bill which extended to orphans a clothing allowance, and that was something that this government could pick up and run with because it was done in a way that wasn't political. She didn't play petty politics with that. She came in with a sensible bill and we were happy to back it, phase it in a way that is affordable and to make that extra entitlement available to some of the most vulnerable children in the country and their parental and actually grandparental. Often it's guardians who are grandparents or immediate whānau members, making that available to them when previously they had access to no such entitlement. So I'm quite proud of the work that the government has done in that regard. We're extending paid parental leave also to Kiwi workers who previously weren't entitled under the penny pinching and miserable scheme offered by the previous Labour government. So we have, for instance, those who are self-employed, but we also have casual, seasonal and contract workers. And we know, Sir, that some of the most vulnerable in our workforce are those casual, seasonal and part-time workers who previously didn't actually get that opportunity. The seasonal workers who come in to do the vital work, picking fruit in the orchards, helping out in the dairy farms, helping in our tourism industry, which is very seasonally variable. Those people are often on lower salaries, and extending paid parental leave to them offered them a considerable improvement over the miserable scheme that the previous Labour government left in place. Another area where I'm quite proud of the work the government's done is extending paid parental leave to the parents of preterm babies, that is, babies who were born early, giving an extra week of paid parental leave for every week that a baby is born preterm. And I know, Sir, that there isn't always exact certainty over when a baby is due, but given that we have many babies in this country that are born a month, even 6 weeks before term, and their parents need that extra support, I'm quite proud that this is a compassionate government, that John Key leads a caring government, and that we have come in and brought in that entitlement where none existed under the previous miserable scheme offered by the last Labour government. Also extending parental tax credits, Sir. This is a very positive measure. We've extended PPL, but also increased the parental tax credit to give parents more choice about what is important to them during what is a very important time in any parent's life. So, sir, I think for all of these reasons this is a bill we should not be supporting, and I personally will be voting against it. Thank you, sir.